Hello. Welcome to another battleship inspection in World of Warships. And we are looking at the Niord, the Dockyard Tier 9. Um, should you get the Niord from the Dockyard? Probably not. Tier 9s stay dog shit, unfortunately. Now, with that being said, because I don't think Tier 9 battleships are really worth playing unless they're OP as fuck. This is not OP as fuck. I actually think this is not a bad little ship. We just looked at the Carl Johan, like I said a few times in that video. I think the ship is just inarguably much better because it gains its value in ways that are consistent and reliable. Um, so the guns are basically copy paste Tirpitz guns with point 0.1 better Sigma. They have the same AP and HE damage, the same penetration, the same even range. Actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure the range is identical to Tirpitz. So they are Tirpitz guns with a 5-second better reload and point 0.1 better Sigma. So is that good? Surprisingly, it's not bad actually. Um, Now, you might notice here that my range is quite long, and I am taking the range mod because I call this the Preussen effect of, in my opinion, there are three reasons you would take range mod on a battleship. One, the reload's already great. Two, the extra range is useful to have. And three, you're improving your dispersion. The improving your dispersion part always matters, right? You're always on every battleship when you slap range mod on it, you're going to improve your vertical dispersion by about 2-3% at most ranges, right? Especially closer ranges. But that is not a reason enough to put it on battleships, or I would put it on every battleship, right? You also, in my opinion, need. I've discussed this a few times on this stream, but you need the other two factors for range mod to be what I go for. Um, Great reload to start. Yeah, fact check true on this thing. Great reload. 21-second base reload. Yes, getting it down to 19 is an improvement. But battleships aren't really DPM ships. Does shaving 2 seconds off your reload like effectively mean anything? It's a nice little buff, but it's not something like mega massive, right? It's not like taking 4 or 5 seconds off a longer reloading ship. Um, Two, is the range usable? Absolutely yes. Tirpitz AP, Bismarck AP, high velocity. The guns have decent accuracy. Battleship dispersion with 1.9 Sigma. This is fine. It's not amazing. It's decent accuracy. So you have good reload, decent accuracy, usable range, even out to this range because of the shell velocity. So in my mind, and it's not great on a great HE spammer. That's kind of the other X factor, right? We just looked at the Carl Johan. The Carl Johan and this thing almost do the same damage per shell with HE, which is crazy considering these are 380s as opposed to 305s. So I take range mod. I prefer it over the reload. It's not the objectively correct choice. But now you might have noticed the CV went for me, prompting me to kite away. It's going for me again. Unfortunately, we are just experiencing what we call a Matchmaker monitor enthusiast. And this carrier is going to decide at the start of the game, the guy with the funny colored stats is going to be my bitch. And what's actually interesting is he's going to demonstrate why you shouldn't do this. Why you shouldn't focus a player just because they have good statistics at the detriment of playing the game and helping your team. Now, you also notice that we hit a torp at a range where the Carl Johan probably would not have on that Richelieu who slowed down and ate a torp. So I'm going to load the HE to get a permanent fire, right? No, there's no permanent fires. Unfortunately, he ends up like barely dodging that other torp. But the extra torp range is great, and that's another reason why these torps, in my opinion, are objectively better. Kind of for multiple reasons, Carl Johan. Number one, the torpedo damage output is virtually identical. The Carl Johan has something like, bro, I don't know, 3,000 more torpedo DPM. Something like absurd, like less than 3% better torp DPM. Now, Okay, so given that you pump out the same torp damage over the course of a game, which has the better torps? Well, these go 1.5 kilometers farther, so that's a big selling point. They are, however, less stealthy. They go the same speed. They're both, Swedish torps, like 85, 86 knot base speed. But these do have a 1 second worse reaction time. They have I want to say, is it 9 versus 8? Or 8 versus 7. I think it's 8 versus 7. Basically, 1 second less reaction time. Does that matter at max range? Maybe. Um, Maybe they're ever so slightly to dodge, easier to dodge. Sorry, but you have a harder hitting torp salvo because you send out 10. And in my opinion, this is an opinion. I think it's true of main guns on almost every ship in the game. If you have the same damage output, you'd rather get it from salvo weight than shell volume. Um, there's a few reasons for that. One, DCPs. Constant spamming people with guns while the DCP is up is not giving you fire chance. Two, especially on battleships, you're often holding onto your shot to fire. Same thing with torpedoes. Sure, having Holland torps that reload in 70 seconds is nice, but if you're getting pushed by a battleship, do you really care? No, you would probably rather have the Shima torps that reload in 2 minutes and you just held on to them and now you can one shot the BB, right? When you're torping people across the map, I would personally argue that having 10 torps instead of 8 is more than counteracting the fact that they're easier to spot because the spread is wider by, 25%, 10 versus 8, 25% more torps out in the water, 25% wider swath of torps they can run into. And then the longer range makes them usable earlier, usable longer. And then there's the torpedo firing angles. On this thing, they're 30 front and back, roughly. On Carl Johan, they're 40. So you can actually use these torpedoes in a brawl without getting deleted. You can use these torps quite comfortably in a brawl while pushing in, without showing 40 degrees, which will just let people click you under the guns for half your boat, right? And then obviously when you're brawling, like, the stealth doesn't even matter at all, and having an extra 20, 400 torp alpha per strike is way better. So I would argue that because the torps have the same damage output, but these go farther, put out 2 more torps per set with much better firing angles, objectively better torps. I don't see how you can argue they're not objectively better. With the sole exception maybe being a guy is pushing you barely outside your range and you are constant spamming. But again, you're sending 10 instead of 8, so you're more likely to get 1 to hit. And then the guns are just objectively better. You have basically the same damage output with the guns. The AP damage output on this thing is actually more than Carl Johan. HE is a bit worse. But you have the same dispersion with 0.1 better Sigma than Carl Johan. But then, of course, like we mentioned, the range mod, we are running range mod, but also you have better base range, so better vertical dispersion. Just and of course, 25 is letting you overmatch things that matter. Yes, 25 isn't great fighting tier 10s. However, there's a ton of light cruisers that are common with 25. San Martin, Worcester. There's a ton of heavy cruisers like Zhao, the Frenchies, right? There's a lot of the cruiser battleships have 25. 25 is a great threshold to hit. There's a ton of ships in this, a ton of cruisers in this game as well that have a turtleback that's overmatchable if you have battleship caliber guns. 305s don't punch through the turtleback. These do. That's really, really nice. A lot of armored destroyers have a 25 millimeter plate, and it's not the end of the world if you have AP loaded against them, right? The 380s is immeasurably better as a caliber than 305s for very, very, very many reasons. There's so many ships that it matters against. You see, I want you to look at the range that we're torpedoing this guy at, and the location he will die. Spoiler alert to my torpedo, because he will. And it's going to be, yet again, another torp volley that the Carl Johan won't hit. Pushing in, we talked about it a little at the end of the Carl Johan review, but On the Carl Johan, on Schlieffen, on these ships, this area right here near the base of the superstructure and the B turret has casemate secondaries that provide shell traps. When you are pushing in this thing, you have 32 no's like Carl Johan. Yes, you don't have the icebreakers, so you maybe suffer ever so marginally against the couple ships that overmatch 32 but not 35. And but as long as you're not pushing into 460s, you're actually very tanky. The superstructure is not very big. There's not really any shell traps to speak of when you're pushing in. Now, kiting, as I'm sure you've noticed, this has the Italian treatment. Yeah, look where he died. Wouldn't have reached him with 13 fives on the Carl Johan. Um, so to me, it's the fact that this thing has much better guns. Overall, noticeably better torpedoes. Overall, it's way more survivable. The heal is slightly improved also. We can talk about that. It's the halfway heal. It's the 16.8% base healing as opposed to the standard BB heal of 14% repair that what's it called? Carl Johan. Yeah, Carl Johan gets. It's not improved in any other way. And then the torp protection is basically the same. I mean, it's like 2-3% better than Carl Johan, but it's pretty shit. Undeniably, it's shit. You hit torps in this thing, you get fucked up. And you don't have a Hydra like Carl Johan, but you are faster. You're about, I want to say, a knot and a half faster. You're a bit more maneuverable. The turning circles, a little bit better. The rudder shift, I think, might be about a second better. We'll look at it in the port. I can't remember. And really the only thing that Carl Johan has going for it is the, 1.6 kilometer better concealment when you build for it, which I don't really value at all on that ship. This thing is 12-2. It's great. It's fine. It's more than enough. And then the Carl Johan is the secondaries that you don't really ever even get to use. This thing's secondaries are, admittedly pretty fucking junk, I would say, in both the fire starting and the DPM output. You would never build for them. I mean, you see the dispersion, right? If you've watched this channel, you will know, especially if you watch the stream, you will know that I am a range mod apologist. I am absolutely a range mod apologist on a bunch of battleships. I think it's a very under-thought of skill. Maybe not underappreciated, but I think people just say, like, well, I have 21 kilometer range on 12 KMD tech. That's fine, and I want a better reload. Right? Like with this and Preussen, they just want the reload. And it's like, having turrets that turn 6 seconds faster and having, 10 meters vertical dispersion at medium range and having railguns that can hit things at your new max range, it's not bad, It's kind of fucking nice at times, guys. That's not to say reload mod is bad. Obviously, you're more DPM, but because this thing is very questionable as an HE spammer, the HE spam on the Carl Johan is noticeably better. Like I said on that, I would build that for reload. But I would say this ship, it's like 90-10 HE to AP, or sorry, AP to HE. The HE is, that German style HE where it just kind of does nothing. So I would just stay on the AP almost the whole time, really. But the dispersion with range mod, quite respectable. CV, our little friendo, is back to humping me. But fortunately what he's done, going back to that discussion, is he's kind of lost his team the game by perma-griefing me. Because he was dropping me on the I line because I decided if this CV wants to grief me perma, I'm going to make him fucking work for it, which is what you should do. And he decided he wanted to try to work for it. With brisk up, you go about 37 knots, which is pretty cool, right? And I would say brisk on this ship is, it's either brisk or the 2.AA skill. Again, if you watched my Carl Johan review, I said that both of my Carl Johan games would have been improved if I had run the 2.AA skill instead of brisk. Well, yeah, it's true here. I would say the 2.AA skill is better than brisk on at least 90% of battleships in this game. And it's not just because of CVs. There's so much airstrike bullshit in this game. Also, anytime you're in a sub lobby and you're on the flank with your sub, submarine planes being launched at your sub are gonna reduce the cooldown of your consumables. It is a mega skill. Basically, in my opinion, virtually mandatory on a ship that doesn't use Brisk as a no-brainer. So that would be like any of the USBBs. It's a mandatory skill in my opinion. I have Brisk on this. I don't think it's as good as 2.8 skill. I really don't. Especially on ships with good reload, right? Like, I'm taking range, like, we're reloading in 17 seconds, guys. Like, what am I doing with Brisk on this ship? I can reposition better, sure. But that's my point is I just think Brisk is such an incredibly overhyped skill in this game because a few people on the interwebs talk it up. And I do think that, like, let's put it this way. There's almost no game where Brisk makes you win the game. Brisk is a comfy skill to have on some ships in some games. It can be nice. There's almost no game where you're going to win because you had Brisk on your battleship. There are an uncountable a number of games that I have played where the only reason I win is I have the 2.AA skill. So while I'm running Brisk in these two replays, I would probably run AA skill on this ship. And almost any ship, really, with very, very few exceptions. I would say the super stealthy and super fast ships like Incomp and Loria are two of the only ships that I really run it on. And then on Colombo, because the AA range is so gimped that 2.8 skill doesn't really do anything for you. So game number 1 was quite fun and quite engaging, undeniably. We eked out a win, and we're going to hop straight into the next game, where we are going to see more of the exact same kind of very fun and very engaging gameplay that we have all come to love from World of Warships, which is going to be a man with planes deciding that you playing the game isn't fun for him. And yet again, the 2.AA skill for this game would have come in fucking massive for me. And this game is going to start out extremely, extremely poorly because my CV is maybe human, maybe not. And is going to kind of let ships get in some very aggressive positions very early without trying to deter them at all. And this game is going to kind of devolve into me kiting against half the enemy team, getting griefed perma by Kearsarge planes. Yet again, man, there's so many planes in this game now, right? 3 years ago, I would have said, well, that was before Brisk got buffed. Remember, Brisk got buffed on battleships a while back. A few years ago, I would have said Brisk would have been a mega skill on all these ships, Vermont, Montana, this ship, Carl Johan. Bro, there's just so many planes. There's so many planes. And it's not just that, like I said, it's not just that Brisk is being nullified by playing spotting. It's that there's so many planes, man. Every time, nice little tumor. I see there we're hitting 7 out of 8 though. Pretty fucking cool. Pretty fucking cool, man. 7 out of 8. There's so many planes, dude. Golden Lion, Tromp, the new light cruiser Dutch planes, the PVO, submarines causing everything to spam planes. People kind of spam planes in general just to see what you're doing, right? Because if your AA's on, you will get a vision on what the enemy player is doing, right? Obviously, very unfortunate timing on this guy, and I didn't pay attention. And if you're hearing the stream, I blame my carrier for letting the John Bark get here undetected. And I mean, we got to admit when we're wrong. I'm just a fucking moron. I mean, this is undeniably me being a retarded bot. I just get nuked, and it's he's gonna reload boost me and nuke me again. It's like, bro, he was spotted. He was spotted on the fucking minimap. Bro, look at the guy. There we go. If only I had it that size when I was streaming this, I would have fucking seen the guy on the rock shitting on my dick. So that one's on me. I didn't need to lose 30,000 health to him. That was retarded. You have a Citadel in this ship. You're kind of a Rubric Citadel, but the hull's overall, I think, a lot better. We'll look at it a little bit better in Armor Viewer. So unfortunately, you don't have any improved Citadel healing in this thing. So I've just permanently lost 22,000 HP. to a salvo that there was no reason for me to eat either of those salvos. I'm just botted flat broadside, BB monkey playstyle, aiming at the Kearsarge tumor, getting nuked by this fucking Jean Bart. So unfortunate, but my Los Andes is speedrunning his ship. He's in probably the single tankiest tier 9 battleship in the entire video game. Literally cannot be citadel by basically anything that exists in this game. No fire prevention. Speedrunning his boat. He's already dead, so not great. Undeniably not great. Our Buffalo's on the island, so I don't want to abandon him. The problem is I don't really have anything spotted. And, you know, I'm in a crossfire, right? We've got the Jean Bart, the Massachusetts middle. They're just botting out middle for free. The Kearsarge is HE spamming me. So I don't, you know, admittedly, this is a situation where I'm not really sure what the play is. A lot of people are already permakiting. I don't want to do that because the Scharnhorst is going to push the Buffalo, right? So, like, I want to push back in. The problem is, as soon as I start pushing in, I will now be flat right to all of these guys. Massachusetts, Jean Bart will have my broads. If I ever try to push back in, I'm going to be crossfired by those guys. So this is where it would be great if the team had a bit of game sense, the CV in particular. Because right now, the most important ship to kill would be the Jean Bart. Because the Jean Bart is representing basically the crossfire on me and the Buffalo. The Massachusetts is obviously a bit as well, but his guns are way less consistent on broadsides than Jean Bart, right? The reload booster is nutty. That's one of the worst tier 9 BBs to be flat to for long periods of time, obviously. So in a perfect world, what we would do is the CV would read the room and start going for the Jean Bart, but that is not going to happen. So I'm just going to kind of, you know, risk it because at the end of the day, my Buffalo tried to take an aggressive position, right? He tried to play the video game. So I make the, you know, the decision, like, we're probably going to lose this game. Basically just solely down to map position, even though as of right now, we're slightly up on points. We have a cap and they don't. Basically, this early on in the game, it's pretty much a loss. I shot because he was slowing down, and then, of course, he accelerated out from the salvo. And, again, you see here why I don't enjoy playing torpedo boats, because the Scharnhorst turning out like this just doesn't really make any goddamn sense at all. I torped for him to do the logical play, which would be to push in on the Buffalo, and instead he's kiting out to not gain an angle on the Buffalo and to allow the Buffalo access to his broadside once the Buffalo is able to shoot him. So another reason why I don't particularly value the torps on a ship like this. Now, I think they're way better than we discussed that, you know, they're better than the Carl Johan torps. But I wish that Wargaming would stop balancing battleships that get torps around getting torps. Because it's just such a dubious ability to have. They're so inconsistent to hit. They just break. I mean, permanently broken modules is, you know, again, I'll say it, probably one of the single stupidest mechanics in this entire video game. It's incredibly smooth brain to have that in a game. Especially because it's basically impossible to perma a main gun on a battleship. It almost never happens. Maybe one in a couple hundred games you get a battleship turret perma'd, as opposed to every game you fucking play in these brawling battleships, you lose torps. Should have shot AP at him, monkey moment. So, you know, I miss all the torps because this guy made a play that didn't really make any sense. And I'm an admittedly bad bot. You know, we call it bot whispering in my clan. I'm not that great at it. I have this horrible habit of assuming the enemy player has at least room temp IQ. They never do, and I miss the torps, and then I mauled about it. So unfortunate. I should have been shooting AP at this guy. He would have already been dead. I don't know why I'm still shooting HE. Just a moron, I guess. So, you know, I'm kiting into this corner really just to dodge the Kearsarge salvos. But the game's over. Like I said, pretty much the second our carrier let these guys bully middle, we lost the game. Despite the fact that, like, we were even on ships, even up a cap. It was never to be, basically. And now the Kearsarge will just perma-hunt me the rest of the game. We'll kill this guy and we'll try to turn in. But I mean, the game is over. There is no winning at this point, because we gave up middle, basically. Unfortunate, but it happens. Um, does this ship have high game impact for a tier 9 battleship? It's pretty okay, really. I feel like it's tough because I feel like when I watch a lot of reviews, people just like review the ship as it exists in its tier, but like the reality is, right? I mean, we're a tier 9, right? We're top tier in this game, but like they have a Kearsarge, which is a tier 10, right? I mean, there's nothing you can do against a ship like that. The HP pool is a problem. Like I said in the Carl Johan review, it's the tier 9 problem that all these battleships and cruisers get in this tier, but mostly the battleships, which is interesting enough because when it comes to light cruisers, for some reason, light cruisers get access to, for their style of ship, an okay HP pool at like tier 8. Right? Like you think of ships like Jinan that have like mid 30,000 tier or HP pool, or Colbert that gets 40,000 HP at tier 10. And then the ships that are kind of a similar playstyle get the same HP but lower. And they don't, for some reason, do that with battleships. They're very, very fond of turbo gimping the HP pool on these tier 9 BBs. And then you have to fight tier 10s and super ships, and you literally just can't kill them. Like, I mean, fight this thing, fight a main in this thing, dude. Just tell me how it goes. Oh, that's not a fair comparison. It's a tier 9. Yes, it is a fair comparison because you're going to have to fight a main every 3 or, a super bro, a devastation. I played a game of Niord a few days ago, and I, no shit you, got point and click 3 times with HE. I was in a 67,000 health Niord, and a devastation at 17 kilometers because I was perma-spotted by CV, killed me in 3 HE salvos. 18k double fire, 15k fire, and like 18k double fire or something, and I just died. There's nothing you can do against these ships. The torps are a great push staller. They're a great zoner tool, but you're not like gonna like realistically drive by a fucking Montana and hit 8 torps on them. I mean, that's probably not gonna fucking happen. Even in this thing with some better torps than Carl Johan. Um, Jean-Bart is just still alive. I mean, the game's over. Like, it just doesn't even fucking matter. I'm really just at this point pushing in because like this Kearsarge is cosplaying as a midway, despite the fact that he basically has one of the like 3 best battleship gun suites in all of tier 9. Just AFK on a rock cosplaying as a midway. Really incredible game design. Game design and player design. I mean, I wish we could study the brains of some of these players for science purposes. So there you go. I mean, disable the torp when they're 3 seconds away from being reloaded, right? I mean, it's the battleship with torp feature. I mean, your ship is balanced around having an armament that breaks every time you get hit by a salvo and perma breaks every 3rd time you get shot by HE. And then because you have these great torps, Wargaming has to balance your ship by giving it 15,000 less HP than it maybe should have, or, gimping the AP performance or something, right? Like, you give up something for these torps, make no mistake about it. Cruiser moment, though. Obviously very cool. Of course, on full display, why having the 380s is infinitely superior to Carl Johan's torps. And here's another thing that makes me mauled when I torp. Surely the Kearsarge has more than 4 brain cells. Surely the Kearsarge would not let me rush up and torpedo him. Surely the Kearsarge would not position in the only place where I can guarantee push and torpedo him. So what do? We torp for him to go forward. I can't play torp boats, man. This is why I don't value the torpedo boats, because I am torping this guy as if he has the same IQ that I have, which is to say maybe 80. Maybe 80 IQ points. But he doesn't. He has 4 IQ points. So he just permanently reverses to keep his guns unable to shoot me, and then I miss all the torps. And listen, I get it. This is a playstyle thing. The 9 out of 10 players who play this game would be like, Or the Gray Line, and if I had torped the Gray Line, I would have killed him, right? I would have ended this game with an extra 50,000 HP, or sorry, 50,000 damage. I would have felt great about myself. I have this horrible habit in ships with torpedoes of assuming the enemy player has half of one brain cell to try to scrape together and make some friction out of it and fire the neurons, and they don't. So I don't value the torps. I understand that that's a playstyle preference thing. And again, though, that's bringing me back to like this thing versus Carl Johan. Like the guns are way better. The ship is more survivable, even though it's less stealthy and it has less HP, solely because the heal is better and the hull is way better. But then also the torps are better. Like in my opinion, the torps are way better. I mean, if you want to zone people, they're better because you have a bigger torp spread with longer range. Okay, 1 second worse reaction time. Who gives a fuck? At close range, they're way better because of the firing angles and the torp alpha per volley. So at the end of the day, like you have way better guns, a bit better torps, a bit better survivability than Carl Johan, and you give up 1.6 KMD tech and a hydro. I make that trade. I mean, personally, I'm fine with that trade. I'm totally fine with it. I think. I mean, most like all of these games, you don't get to use concealment anyway, man. Like, you know, I mean, you'd rather just be able to touch people at longer range, I think. And as always, we're starting with the equipment. Now, I'd say there's a little wiggle room. Cold ECP, of course. You know, I think anything with a 15-second base base DCP, you grab the cold DCP for it. Especially a ship like this that has 4 separate turrets, right? It's a little different on some ships like Republic where you can lose half of your gun power, but especially on a ship with ABXY turrets, I do really like that improved DCP. Then a couple of options really in these two slots. Like I said throughout the video, I do believe that the Niord meets the 3 criteria of range mod. All battleships, of course, meeting it improves your dispersion criteria. But then the other 2, which is the extra range useful and is the reload good enough without the range? I think that's definitely true on this ship. But you can run reload and shave another about 2 seconds off the reload time. A bit more, maybe like 2.3 seconds. A bit more DPM for sure. That's a totally viable option. And then it's steering or prop mod in this slot. Not 100% sure really on what I like, but this turning circle is so nice that bringing your rudder shift down from about 16 to 12.3 seconds makes you actually turn faster. You know, again, like we talk about, there's kind of a bit of math with the rudder versus the turning circle. You know, if this turning circle radius was like 980 or something, like a giant battleship turning circle, then I wouldn't recommend any value out of rudder shift at all. But because the turning circle is like down in the heavy cruiser section, you know, this is giving you like cruiser turning basically. Pretty fucking nice. I do like it. Now, on the other hand, unlike the Carl Johan, your firing angles forward and aft with your guns and your torps are quite good. So you're not really needing the rudder shift to get your guns on target while angling in and out. I just think it's a bit comfy to play it like that. I do overall think standard BB build is the best. Of course, though, like I mentioned, the option is brisk or 2.0 AA skill. You definitely don't need grease the gears. Even if you run reload, you'll only have like a 34.5 second turret traverse, totally workable. Are you tanking 2 million to get an extra heal? No, not really. However, the hull is reasonably tanky, and you have a low amount of HP, so this is reloading the heal quite fast. I would probably overall go with the AA skill, man. It's tough in randoms to recommend brisk over 2.0 AA skill, and the AA range is a full 6. You know, it's not gimped like some of the like German ships are, where it's like 5.2. So CVs actually do have to be in your, you know, range for a bit. Another kind of slept on skill is vigilance. You know, you'll bring your torp protection survivability up to a 30% reduction. Spot the torps earlier. It's kind of an underrated skill on battleships, but I would say overall, you know, my priority typically is like 2.0 AA skill, brisk, vigilance, unless there's no value to brisk or 2.0 AA skill, which is not true. There's very few ships that's true of. So that would probably be like the one change that I would make. And then when we look at the armor, the whole profile is kind of like inarguably better than the Carl Johan, but the Citadel is, I believe, much more vulnerable if we strip away these layers. I'm sorry, I have that like totally backwards. It's basically the same. For some reason I was thinking that this Citadel was easier to hit, but it's not really. Maybe slightly easier. But both of these ships do take Citadels. But as you can see, the hull is really not bad. And particularly like what I was talking about is when you push bow in, right? Pushing bow in, there's just not a lot to shoot at because the step down happens early. Now when you kite, like I mentioned, kiting in this thing is horrific because you have the shell trap on the casemate here, and you have the superstructure is more shell trappy, and hitting it here is going to lead to full pens. But when you push in, like take a mental picture of this, and then like we looked at with the Carl Johan, it's this horrific shell trapping here, and I would argue that the shell traps on Carl Johan are significantly, I mean, it's not an argument, it's a fact, they're significantly worse from behind compared to the Niord. The hull is fairly resilient, really, unless you're fighting a 32 overmatcher. Now, of course, both of these ships have 32 everywhere, so heavy cruiser HE spam, you kind of suffer mad in these ships. They kind of have like tier 8 deck plating, really, which is kind of unfortunate. Again, this is the tier 9 curse. Because the Niord, you know, I think we're running the flag. All right, so let's take the flag off and look at the HP pool there. 64,000. You know, if this ship was in tier 10 and it had this 21-second base reload and all they did was just make these Schlieffen turrets, the 400 and I believe 20mm guns that Schlieffen has, they don't have a lot of pen, right? Good velocity, good accuracy, 1.7 sigma. Bro, if they had literally just done that and then given this thing like even just a main deck of 51 or 50 like the normal Germans have, like the German ships have, slap it in tier 10, you know? It's very frustrating that Wargaming keeps doing this. You know, another selling point, I mean, not that I'm typically a skin guy, but you can't lie, man. You can't lie. The art department was cooking on this skin. Were they not? Were they not cooking on this one? So yeah, if either of these attracts you, I just think Niord is way better. It relies on very decent main guns to gain its game impact. Overall, Torp's indisputably better. Carl Johan requires this weird universe where you get to brawl at 10 kilometers in a tier 9 battleship and rant like, doesn't fucking happen, dude. And then you have to show mad broadside to Torp and shoot your guns. So despite having a lower HP pool, right, it has a solid, like, what, 9,000 less HP. In my experience, this ship feels significantly tankier when you play it properly because, yeah, again, you're showing, like, auto bounce angle, right? And even when you're angled up to shoot your guns, which is something like this, it's not a terribly big superstructure, right? And there's no shell trap in the back. So realistically, like, kind of this is the target, right? You can angle to auto bounce pretty much all battleship guns and get all your guns off in the yard, which is pretty mega. Yeah, undeniable. I mean, this ship is just bad. To me, if you play the same way that I do, you value the same things as a ship as I do. To me, the ship is like indisputably better, way better guns, overall better torps, overall more survivable despite lower HP pool. It's the Niord, and I think, you know, in the dockyard, I don't know how many phases you have to buy to get it, but it's certainly going to cost you less than the, like, what, 15,000 doubloons or whatever Carl Johan's going to run you. So it's going to be cheaper to buy. That's one. So, now can I, like, recommend it? Man, it's tier fucking 9. Stop. Wargaming, stop doing this to me. In a world where you never fought tier 10s and super ships, I think this is a good battleship, like a good battleship. In a world where you never fight tier 10s and super ships, I don't think the Carl Johan is very good. I think the Carl Johan is like a mediocre tier 9. I think this is a good tier 9. Your damage output's pretty wicked, even for a tier 9, right? I mean, you don't have the 406s to overmatch things, but again, man, it's like we could have just put this in tier 10 with Schlieffen turrets. Then it would have been wicked good fun. Sad. Oh well. So if you're, you know, the collectivist, or you know, you just want, if you just want this ship and you just want to know how it is, I actually do think it's quite decent for its tier. And that'll do it for the Blabbin. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.